Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of We Watch Shudder. My name is JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
It's Michelle. And before we talk about anything else, guys, I guess what I want to say is, first of all, if this is your first time listening, thanks for checking us out. Buckle your seatbelts, because we're getting right into it today. Therapy portion right off the bat. Before we started recording, we actually had to say, hey, hold on. Maybe we should save this for the show, which, I don't know. You maybe don't tell your therapist that part. But Michelle started telling me about how she had a death binder.
Yeah, not even have. It's just electronic now. This is very funny because I did have therapy today, and my therapist was saying that she kind of wanted to check out the show, and I was like, it's different than looking at my personal stuff because this is public record, and I want more listeners, so I don't care. But yeah, during COVID, I became obsessed with how I would definitely die someday. And people would be like, don't talk like that. I'm like, no, it's inevitable. I don't want to live forever. Maybe it'll be a million years from now. Maybe I will upload my consciousness into the cloud and I will never be able to escape, being alive. And then I will be forever tormented because living in eternity would be torture. But in order to cope with all of these feelings of despair, I did start making a very intense death binder so that when I die, all of my affairs are in order. It included a living will, and it specified if I'm in a coma, here's what I want you to do in case I am aware of anything going on in my surroundings. Here's the type of shows I like, type of music that I like. At this point, you should pull the plug. At this point, don't. I specified all of that. I put all of the bills and the contacts for each of those and which cards they come out of. So what I'm saying is I'm definitely mentally stable, and I definitely got married for the right reasons and not because I was terrified that somebody would have control of my body and my affairs, who I did not want to have control of that.
So yeah, like I said, welcome to the show. This is the kind of stuff we talk about on a regular basis. We dove right in. This is actually take two because things went awry with take one to such a degree that JD had to step away for about an hour. Cool as
therapy
goddamn
portion.
Ooh. Let me just tell you this, guys. I love her to death, and she's the greatest, and she means the world to me. But man, living with your mother again when you're 43 years old. Whew, man, it's there are some challenges involved in that situation.
I can only imagine. Oh yeah, you. I was kind of concerned when you're like, yeah, I think I'll be ready at 10, and I was like, what version of JD am I going to get at 10? And this is it's a much better JD.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be all right, especially once we get rolling into the episode. Which brings me to the point. I mean, as Michelle pointed out to me once just recently, and now I can't stop thinking about it or mentioning it, you guys all saw the title of the episode. You know what we're here to talk about.
I have noticed that you mention it every time now.
Of like, oh yeah, they're thinking
aware
about it now. Terrifier 3. That's what we're
Terrifier
talking
3.
about.
That is indeed.
Yeah, the biggest goddamn movie in America. I mean, that's just mind-boggling to me. It's a genuine, legitimately independent film. It's a legitimately independent horror film on top of that. It's a legitimately independent, unrated horror film on top of that. And it's the number one movie at the box office. That's fucking incredible, Michelle.
It is. I am very surprised by it. However, I am also very proud because one of my friends named Brittany, I have to specify because there are so fucking many of them and they all spell it differently. But one of my Brittany friends.
Is it a Brittany?
This one, oh God, I would have to go make sure, but I'm pretty sure she is a Brittany. Yes, she is. Double T's. Hey, Brittany.
Double T's and an A.
But somebody told her that if she can handle Terrifier, she will have no issue with the Saw franchise. And I'm so happy that we're about to have another Saw fan on our hands. Because I was like, yeah, Saw at the time was edgy. It is nothing compared to Art the Clown.
Yeah. This actually drops at a perfect time for us. we just decided, yeah, we're already doing one episode every day all month long, but this is too big of a deal for us to pass by. Some of you who have been with us for a while, or maybe you've just spent some time looking through the archive, will know we've already done an episode during Spooktober last year where we talked about the original Terrifier short film from 2011. We just did an episode like a few days ago, maybe a week or so ago, finally discussing the original feature-length Terrifier from 2016. And then we told Terrifier 2 to fuck off and jumped right to Terrifier 3.
It's basically exactly how it went. We did do Terrified, the Argentinian film that's one of my favorite things Shudder has ever put out, back on October 3rd, 2022. So I think, you know what, we've done enough Terrified, Terrifier, terrifying episodes that it's okay if we skip one.
And to be honest, I am going to talk a little bit about Terrifier 2, not in any spoilery way, I don't think. I mean, we will in the spoiler section, but I just don't think it's entirely possible to talk about this one without talking about the second one. Let's talk about our history with Terrifier for folks who might not have heard those previous episodes, Michelle. How long ago did you first see it? What were your first impressions? How do you still feel about it today? Just a little bit about your background with Terrifier.
Yeah, Terrifier, the full-length movie, 2016's release, I probably saw close after it got released on Shudder, or maybe it was a different streaming service back then, but I think it landed on Shudder. And watched it, loved it. Art the Clown is my favorite evil guy from recent times. I feel like he is maniacal in a way that a lot of bad characters are not. He just likes to fuck shit up, and I am a huge fan of that. I love gore. I like twisted things. I like when my dog barks in the background for no apparent reason at 10:09 p.m. because she heard the wind. So love that. If anybody hears her, she's little and very loud and annoying, but cute. So I keep her around. But yeah, I really love Art the Clown. I've had mixed feelings about his movies and certain moments in these movies that we'll talk about a little bit later. But Terrifier, it seemed like such a silly concept when I saw the first movie, and I was like, what is this guy? What is this? Is this a comedy? Like, I think it's hilarious. It is not listed as comedy on any of the IMDb pages. Nowhere does it say anything about comedy. It's all horror, slasher horror, splatter horror, teen horror, holiday horror. But they never say comedy. But I think that he is hilarious. So that is my experience with Art the Clown.
First of all, I agree with you. And I think creator Damien Leone would 100% agree with you that there's absolutely a heavy, like, I'm not just saying there are comedic elements here. It's almost 50-50, right? Like, there is so much comedy that you can't say it's not a horror comedy, but at the same time, there's so much shit that's not funny at all that I guess I can kind of see the trepidation. You know what I mean? It does, so far as the attitude and the tone of it, it does vary quite a bit. And it finds humor in some very repulsive things. Do you think that's fair?
I actually would say, now that I think about it, that the Terrifier franchise is funny in the way that a good comedy roast is funny, where you're like, this is mean, and I don't know if I'm allowed to laugh at this, but it is really, really funny if I'm allowed to laugh at this.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that entirely. It's, I can definitely understand why this would be way too fucking much for some people. But at the same time, it's we sometimes talk about movies being mean. As brutal as this is, as violent as this is, there is something about the tone and attitude of it that makes me at no point think that this movie is really mean. Does that make sense to you?
Depends on your definition of mean. I think Art the Clown is mean,
Okay.
and therefore the movie is mean. I think
Sure.
he likes being mean.
I guess we'll talk about that more in the spoilers section. Anyway,
Yes, please.
I saw Terrifier once forever ago. I wasn't really taken by it at the time. I had the same complaint that a lot of people did. I'm just like, there's no story here, right? It's just one protracted horror set piece, right? It's like the third act of a slasher film turned into the entire film. And then I didn't see it again for a while. I went to see Terrifier 2 in the theater in spite of what I thought of Terrifier, just because, it's always awesome to see and be able to support independent horror in the movie theaters. And also, I was like, well, let's go give this a second chance and see how it goes. And my thoughts on Terrifier 2 were also not super positive. I want to be clear, I love Damien Leone's effects. This guy is obviously a splatter genius. He executes things with incredible levels of disgust, and that's impressive. But then if you've heard our recent episode about Terrifier, I went back and watched it again, and I don't know what was different, but I had a whole new appreciation for it. I definitely see it how you see it. I found Art the Clown to be very, very funny, just so absurdly over the top, like you mentioned. So it was interesting then coming into number 3, because I didn't have a chance to go back and see Terrifier 2 a second time before I saw number 3. So I'm not sure exactly what my attitude would be on number 2 if I went back to see it again. I'm going to have to do that eventually, but went into Terrifier 3 having just changed my opinion on the first one, but still kind of 50-50 on the second one. So that's where we are. Terrifier 3. Michelle, let's do it. You want to give these people the descrippy script?
I would love to give these people the descrippy script, and we are taking it off of IMDb because that one is actually not spoilery. Thank you to whoever wrote the IMDb description. It says nothing.
And because it's not streaming legally anywhere yet.
Well, yeah, that too, legally. So Art the Clown is set to unleash chaos on the unsuspecting residents of Miles County as they peacefully drift off to sleep on Christmas Eve. Terrifier 3, 2024, not rated, 2 hours, 5 minutes. JD?
Yes.
Would you like to hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts?
Spoiler-free thoughts? Yeah.
Did I ask at a bad time? Do you need to catch a breath?
No, I'm fine. I'm just fine. I didn't time that
good.
well. I never time that well. It's fine. No. I still have similar thoughts to Terrifier 3 that I had for Terrifier 2. I still very much am blown away by what Damien Leone is able to do. Just the level of gore that he puts together. It's absolute like Tom Savini worship, just over the top, insane violence and brutality. All of that stuff, again, I found this very funny at times. I laughed out loud in the theater at times where I was the only person laughing, and that was mildly uncomfortable, but also felt right in a lot of ways. But there are just parts of what this is becoming. This is terrifying. I compared it to, I bumped into a buddy of mine when I saw it at the theater, and I compared this franchise to like the Chronicles of Riddick and Pitch Black, right? Like it started as this one thing with just this one character, and it was kind of an interesting story, and he had this cool, interesting, unique thing. And then the next time we see him, there's this whole mythology. It's like a much more elaborate thing. There's all this other stuff going on. Look, ultimately, my problem with Terrifier is I still love all the violence and slasher and horror bits, and it's real great, but I still just don't connect and resonate with the story, like with the characters they're trying to present at all. Frankly, I wish at this point that this had just stayed just kind of like the first one, just crazy, insane wall-to-wall splatter. And it is to an extent, but there's all these other things that they've started putting in, and I just don't care, and they just kind of get in the way for me. I did have fun with the film. I would definitely see this one again. Thankfully, it's 20 minutes shorter than the last one, but it's still way too long. That's okay, I guess. I'm going to give Terrifier 3 for myself, 3.75.
3.75. Would you agree then that it is your least favorite of the ones that you have seen?
No, Terrifier 2 is definitely my least favorite of the three. If I was going to rank if I was going to rank them, it would be 1, 3, 2.
Perfect. That's the one that we did not have a numerical score from a previous episode, so I did not know.
Yeah, because number 1 in our episode, I think I gave a 4, didn't I?
Correct. Yep, both 2011 short and 2016 full length were 4s.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that Part 2 has going against it is just the simple fact that, good God, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
That's so much murder.
Ooh, yeah. Anyway.
Actually, maybe if there was more murder in the 2 hours and 20 minutes, that could be my problem.
If there had been more murder and less not murder, yeah.
Exactly. Anyway, it should be.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Please tell us your spoiler-free thoughts on Terrifier 3.
Yeah. Complicated feelings about Terrifier 3. Here's what I know. I am going to wind up watching this a lot until I reach a point where I love it. I am going to lock myself in a room until this becomes one of my favorite movies. It's just one of those where there is a high rewatch value, but on the first watch, I was kind of confused, and I wish I had known that I would have to remember the plot from Terrifier 2 in order to fully understand Terrifier 3, but that there would also be a lot of extra stuff on top of that. I did not go into this prepared. It's been a while since I saw Terrifier 2, and I guess I needed to rewatch that. So after my first watch, little confused. That said, real gory, and I love that. I like really messed up kills. And I love Art the Clown. I just think he's so maniacal, and he just exists to cause pain. And I think most other murderers in horror movies have like a character arc and a reason, and he doesn't. He's just kind of there to fuck up your day. Well, he does. But he's there to fuck up your day. That is his main goal in whatever way that happens. So, my score overall for my first watch of Terrifier 3, I'm going to go 3.5, but I have a feeling that I will watch this at least 2 more times in the next month, and that it will become like a 4.75 or a 5 by the end of that.
Wow.
I just felt kind of confused after the first time because I did not remember a lot, and I was very confused about like, what is she doing? Oh, okay, gotcha. And I think once that's done, and now that I have a better understanding of what I was watching, I will enjoy it more on a second go around, which is also how I felt about Terrifier 2, though. The first time I was like, oh, it's not just murder for the sake of murder. There's other stuff, and there's this woman, and she had a father, and wow, plot points. And I wasn't prepared for that the first time, and this one gets way more in-depth and includes those plot points from 2 that I didn't care about the first time I watched 2.
Right.
So I'm gonna go 3.5 on first watch, but it's gonna go up. I know that it will.
Impressively, this movie currently has on the audience score, which they now call, I guess, the popcorn meter at Rotten Tomatoes. The tomato meter is the critics' score, and like literally this is the first time I've seen this. The audience score is now called the popcorn meter, but the audience score right now is 88%. I don't know how much time you guys spend on Rotten Tomatoes, but for an audience score to be 88% is fucking insane. People love this movie, and the critics score is 74% right now on the tomato meter. And for this movie, for the critics score to be that high, also pretty impressive. But 3.5 for Michelle, 3.75 for me. That gives it a 3.625 average right now, but it's probably going to go up in the future as Michelle goes
Absolutely
through it.
will. I will Stockholm syndrome myself into loving this.
Stockholm syndrome isn't a real thing, Michelle.
Well, it will be if I say it is, and that's the word I'm using to describe what I'm doing with Terrifier 3 to myself.
You should, seriously though, if anybody's curious, actually now that you mention it, you should do some Googling on Stockholm syndrome and how the terminology came to be and how it's like actually like all about like gaslighting women and all this. It's a very interesting read. It's
yes.
But anyway,
fascinating.
Terrifier 3. That's what we're here to talk about. I think that's enough on this section. We're going to do spoilers now, guys. If you haven't gone to the theater and seen it, Michelle, you should do that. Please support independent horror. Even if this is not your bag, I don't give a shit. Go buy a ticket to Terrifier 3 and fucking sneak into whatever else is playing. I don't give a shit.
Or buy a ticket and don't go if you have disposable income,
for that matter,
which is what I do
buy a
sometimes.
ticket and
I
don't go.
feel
Don't
like
ask for a refund. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes I'm just like, I want to support you, but I don't actually want to put pants on.
Right. Like, look, guys, I'm here to tell you, it's no coincidence that we got Terrifier 2 in theaters 2 years ago, and it did decently well, and then we got The Outwaters, we got Skinamarink, we got Late Night with the Devil, we got In a Violent Nature. Like, the horror industry is on a real strong upturn right now, especially in theatrical releases. And Terrifier, this franchise has a lot to do with that. So let's get into spoilers, Michelle. And I especially want to get here because I've been waiting for this, as I always do. Are you prepared, Michelle?
I'm never fully prepared, but I will give it my best
because
to
I
sum
like
up
you.
the plot.
Much like you, after this one was done, I did have to go back and read the plot summary for Terrifier 2 off Wikipedia. There were a couple of very small things I remembered, but I was like, oh, wait, what the? Huh? Why? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, for those of you listening for the first time, Michelle takes a moment to summarize the plot for anybody who, for whatever reason, might be listening but hasn't seen the film. Oh, Michelle, I know how much you love Art the Clown. Do it.
Okay,
Tell
let's
us all
do this.
about the murder.
Note-free recap of whatever the hell Terrifier 3 was. Okay, so there's a little girl, and it's Christmas time, and up on the rooftop, clip, clop, clip, what does she hear? It's not Saint Nick, it's Art the Clown. What up, bitches? He's here, it's Christmas. He is ready to spread the holiday spirit in the form of murder. And then we get a death of a child. Happens off screen, but then you do see the body parts everywhere. JD has some feelings about that. I have some feelings, and it's hella rad. So that whole family gets murdered, except for the little girl who is hiding out in a cupboard, and he waves at her, and I think she probably got murdered, but we don't really see it. And I don't know for sure if that will come back in like Terrifier 4, and I'm going to have to remember that little girl 2 years from now. Now I know that the Terrifier movies, I have to rewatch the other ones in order to fully get it. And now we're going back in time. It's 5 years ago. Victoria, she was one of Art the Clown's victims, and now she is possessed by what is called the Pale Little Girl. This was one of the things I had to look up because I was not sure how this came about. And she gave birth to Art the Clown's head after he was decapitated in Terrifier 2. And then they go to a rundown house to what we consider hibernate, where Art the Clown sits in a chair. He's very happy, as he always is. This man is that's one thing that you can say about Art the Clown is he is a positive, optimistic person. He's rarely negative. He never has a case of the Mondays. This guy, always happy. And Victoria slits her wrists and then goes to sleep in a tub, which will probably happen to me someday. Sorry, Dark, we're past the therapy portion. Okay, so it's Terrifier 3. I can say those kinds of things about the not rated movie that is never one in the box
I hope your therapist is listening.
Well, hello, welcome. Okay, all of these are jokes. Please do not have me locked up. I have too much to do. So now we're back in the present, and Sienna from Terrifier 2, she goes to live with her aunt, uncle, and her niece Gabby. Then there are some demolitionists who go to the abandoned house, and they're like, "What's with this clown?" And murder is what's with the clown. I believe, if I recall, that's the one where the guy's head or like scalp gets ripped into. And then Victoria likes that a little too much. That's all very, very ooey gooey. Jonathan, he's still alive from Terrifier 2 so far, and he's at college and he meets a podcast host, the worst kind of person. And also, she has a true crime podcast, and she's like, "Jonathan, do you want to be on my show?" And he's like, "No, podcasts are dumb. Anybody can do them. They just need to have access to record audio, and then they can just upload it online, and they can be anybody, including two people from the Midwest who have no experience in the movie industry and just consider themselves fans. Why would I be interested in doing that?" And the lady's like, "Fair." And then Art the Clown befriends Santa at a bar, but then he be-enemies Santa at a bar, and then he be-murders all the other people at the bar except Santa. And then Santa gets nitroglycerin. Is that what the nitrous oxide? Whatever nitro, the cold stuff. Santa gets cold stuff.
Liquid nitrogen.
Liquid nitrogen. Thank you. Yeah, he gets liquid nitrogen, and it happens on his face at some point, and then his face gets ripped off because Art the Clown needs a beard to complete his Santa costume. All of that, really rad. So then Art, he's Santa now, and he's at the mall, and he's giving out gifts, and that's when we get our second and third and fourth and fifth off-screen child kill moment, because they get bombed. Which this movie did not do in the box office. It did not bomb, but there were lots of bombs, and that was intense. I was not gonna lie, that was darker than I thought that this would go. And then something happens with Jonathan and the true crime podcast host again. Blah blah blah. She gets obsessed with the sister. Who cares? What I do care about is that these two are going to get freaky in the shower, but then Art the Clown shows up, and he's got a chainsaw. And it's one of my, listen, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This rivals some of Leatherface's kills, especially when the guy gets chainsawed in the dick and balls. Love that. Huge fan of a chainsaw genitalia. Wow, I really hope that becomes the new thing we see in every movie going forward. Just chainsaw genitalia. Brilliant. It was ooey gooey. I loved it. So then Art the Clown and Victoria, they kill Sienna's uncle, and they hang him up on the wall, and all his innards are coming out, because it's Christmas. And then the aunt, they show her a head in a cage, and they're like, "That's your daughter." And she's like, "Oh no." Just really, really depressed, if you couldn't tell from my impression. "Oh, my daughter." And then they're like, "Ha ha ha, it sucks to be you and not have a daughter, but now you look kind of hungry. We're going to feed you a tube." And they force a tube into her mouth, and then they force rats into the tube, and so the rats are burrowing into her. And fun fact, that is actually somewhat based on a medieval torture technique that they used to use, where they would put rats in a bucket on your stomach, and then they would light the bucket on fire, so they would dig into you, and that's how you would die. JD has pet rats. I wanted to know his opinion of this scene so badly while I watched it. And then to make it better, they slit the woman's throat and the rats come piling out. So I'm really glad that they didn't die in there. They seem pretty happy. They're just like cleaning themselves and being cute little goofballs right afterwards. They're like, "Whoa, that was a fun little adventure." And then it turns out that Gabby's head was not in the cage. It was Jonathan's head in the cage. That's Sienna's brother. And so I guess he died off screen too, which is kind of disappointing, because I expected that to be kind of a big kill. And did they just run out of money to pay Jonathan, the actor who played him? Was that where they were like, "No, we can't pay Jonathan anymore. We have too much money devoted to the dick and balls chainsaw scene, and we cannot pay for Jonathan's actor anymore. He has to die off screen." And then Victoria tries to enter Sienna's body. Oh, she's been tied up this whole time. By the way, it's not a bondage thing. It's just a thing that they do to her. So she's tied to a chair. She doesn't like it. They bash her hands, whatever. And Victoria tries to enter her body, but then Sienna's like, "Wait, can I open a gift? It is Christmas after all." And Art the Clown, being truly dumb for one of the few times in this franchise, because he is not a dumb man person being thing, he's like, okay, but he doesn't say that out loud. Victoria does have a voice, and I kind of don't like that they gave any dialogue to any of these entities. I would prefer that they were just as silent as art, but then again, nobody's going to do what David Howard Thornton does, so I get it. And then she opens the gift, and holy shit, I got a re-gifted item for Christmas. Those dicks. I don't want my dad's magic sword. I wanted an iPhone 13, Mom. But okay, I guess I'll use this. Then she uses the magic sword. She goes stabby, stabby. Gabby gets sucked into the abyss. Art the Clown is now on a bus, going someplace else. And the moral of the story is that Christmas is invading all the other holidays. You think it's bullshit that people start decorating for Christmas just right after Halloween? This movie came out before Halloween. Christmas is invading the other holidays. It's getting a little too out of control. I don't like it. Terrifier 3.
Yeah, first of all, I agree. This movie should have come out closer to Christmas. This is a Christmas horror movie. But I guess,
Which we need more of, so I am happy about that. But how dare they?
But it is spoopy season, so they figured this was the best time to. I mean, let's be fair. They were probably right. This was the smart time to. People might have been a little bit more upset if this movie came out around Christmas. There might have been a little bit stronger reaction to it. Considering all the dead children and all that shit. It's I want to jump right on something you said early on in there, Michelle, which is that Art doesn't even really have a story. He's just kind of there killing people. And that's the thing. I'm just going to say it here. We're in the spoiler section. Like, Art the Clown is her dead father, right?
Is that revealed? Or is that a connection you made that I have
no,
not made?
that's just something that I'm assuming. It hasn't been revealed.
I can basically guarantee you guys, if you have not listened to any of JD's analysis, he is very, very good at picking up on all the subtle things that nobody else with a human brain would figure out. He just operates like 20 wavelengths ahead of us. Terrifier 4, yeah, it's probably going to come out that that's her dad.
Well, I'm not even the first one to suggest such a thing. It has been mentioned before, but here are the first. Let me just run a couple things by you. The original Miles County Massacre from Terrifier 1 took place a little less than a year before Terrifier 2 began, and their dad, if you remember a little bit of the story from Terrifier 2 in the background, something was going wrong with him. I don't know if it was like a brain tumor or something like that, but he started becoming very abusive. And then the way he killed himself is he like drove his car into like an electrical station and it like blew up and he supposedly burned alive or something, was all mutilated. And that was a little bit more than a year before that movie began. So her father dying and the original Miles County Massacre are roughly concurrent in time, right? So, and then there's the whole thing where he had that notebook where he had pictures of Art the Clown, and then he had pictures of this angel character that he created for Sienna. And then like there's all this stuff about they're destined to face each other, and it's this whole like supernatural, like I'm the chosen one sort of thing. It's absolutely gonna be her dad. There's just that's what it's gonna be.
And then I hope what happens is Sienna realizes her dad was right and that she also needs to become a clown and murder people constantly, because I do like the idea of Art the Clown having a family. So fun fact, something that I went to confirm because I had this like idea about it, and then it was confirmed by David Howard Thornton, and that is that Art the Clown is not a sexual being. He will never do anything sexual because he has no sexual desire. So he's not going to reproduce. And I do think that he needs to build a family in a more modern way, a nice hybrid family. And what better way to do that with the person who was originally your birth daughter before you, became this evil demonic clown that is kind of like supernatural and can be headless and then rebirthed and then hibernate for 5 years. I think that like building a good relationship with Sienna is really what Art the Clown needs.
Yeah, so I don't know. That's just kind of where I figure this whole thing is ultimately leading. Is we're gonna find out that Art the Clown is like her reanimated dead father, or like possessed by some evil spirit. Obviously, we know there's whatever that demon thing was that was originally the pale little girl, and then transferred itself into Victoria. Is some sort of presence or involvement here. But here's a big part of why I wanted to ask you about that and bring it up, which is these are the parts of Terrifier 2 and Terrifier 3 that I just don't care about at all. I just don't. It's like, I appreciate what Damien Leone is trying to do, right? There was a decent amount of criticism about a lack of story, and this character of Sienna Shaw is apparently, or this angel character is apparently an idea he had that was going to be written into some sort of production immediately after he did The Ninth Circle, which was the first Terrifier short. That was and then became part of Tales from Halloween, and it just never came to be.
You mean All Hallows Eve, or was it
yeah,
also?
All Hallows Eve?
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. I just misspoke.
Good.
But so this exists in there somewhere, but I don't know. It just it feels so out of tone and out of place. This is what I was talking about, like, where it feels like, we're going from Pitch Black to Chronicles of Riddick, right? This was just a crazy dude who painted himself up like a weird mime clown and brutally butchered people, didn't ever make a sound himself, and now that it's just this, I don't care about Sienna Shaw. I don't care about her brother. I don't care about her family. Frankly, I don't care about where Art came from. None of that part of any of this has interested me in either film. Is there any of that you've found any connection with?
Oddly enough, so Terrifier 1 had little to no plot, and that's why I liked it. But the sequel, I think if they had just done more mindless violence, like, this would not have become such the phenomenon that it is. But at that point with Terrifier 2, I didn't care about Sienna either, and I felt like it really focused too much on her. Now, they have added a lot of plot, a lot of batshit crazy plot, and I actually like that they are now going so extreme in the way that Art the Clown would write a movie about himself. Just insane.
That's an interesting idea.
Of like, yeah, I'm going to get decapitated and then rebirthed by this lady named Victoria who I had mutilated and is now possessed by a demonic entity that we call the Pale Little Girl. Like, that is batshit insane. And I think that I would like that a whole lot, and I probably would have loved this movie on first watch if I didn't have to remember all the boring shit from Terrifier 2 that I didn't care about. So now for Terrifier 4, if they continue going down this road of just telling more of this story, and also I have not done any research, but I feel like Art the Clown had a lot more screen time in Terrifier 3 than he did in 2. In 2, it was a lot more of Sienna, her relationship with her family, her talking to her friends, getting high at that party, all of that. And so there was a lot of plot, but it was focused on her, and so I was bored. This one, even if I'm learning the most insane shit, if it's being told to me from like what Art the Clown is doing, like the idea that he just goes to a dilapidated building and just hibernates for 5 years while smiling, and Victoria, aka the Pale Little Girl, cuts her wrists and is now like sleeping in the bathtub. Like, that makes no sense, and yet it's one of my favorite things from the movie, because it's just like, what what do you mean? Are you on drugs? Probably. But still, it's just such a weird thing that I'm okay with this overcorrection of plot. And I hope it continues to make absolutely no sense. I just hope that I don't have to be an expert in previous movies to follow along. Like, give me the weird shit that I need to know from that. Like, if they had just corrected a little bit where I didn't have to remember the pale little girl from Terrifier 2 and like Victoria and like how that whole possession happened, like if they smoothed that out somehow and this became more of like a singular, like this is just the weird shit we're dealing with in 3, I would enjoy it.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a movie that could have benefited from like a last time on Terrifier little recap
Yes.
sort of thing at the beginning of the film. And I do want to say, like, a lot of people have very much strongly connected with this story, right? Like, we don't get Terrifier 3 if there wasn't so much love for Terrifier 2. And I know just from experience and talking to people, it's not people who are just like, oh, I don't care about any of that stuff, I just love the violence and gore. It definitely has those people, but there are people who are connecting with this. It just doesn't work for me. It's, you know, and that's fine. But you were talking about the hibernation bits in there. First of all, I think Victoria is technically the only one that's quote-unquote hibernating. I think Art just went upstairs and sat down and waited. Like, I don't think he was ever asleep. I don't think he was ever hibernating. I think he was just sitting there waiting. I do think Victoria was obviously in some sort of hibernated state, and that's something I wanted to point out because you and I had talked about how that sequence in particular was a little bit stiff for you, that it was a little bit of a struggle, and I get that entirely.
Yeah.
But I was also...
Which I should clarify, I still love it, but it's rare that something hits a trigger point for me. And I was like, ooh, wrists in particular and Achilles tendons are the two things that if something happens to that in a movie, I have to take a breather. It's because they're such vulnerable areas. And I have a thing about wrists and ankles in movies. So it hit a nerve really badly,
but
and I had to take a moment.
This was wild to me because I happened to be reading through the plot summary for Terrifier 3 on Wikipedia.
Yep.
And the way they describe it is, so Victoria, what she does is she smashes a mirror with her own face, and then she takes a big chunk of glass and she slices open both of her forearms and, in theory at least, bleeds out in an old, dirty, disgusting bathtub. But what it says on Wikipedia, this is all it says. Victoria smashes her face into a bathroom mirror and uses a glass shard to enter hibernation in a bathtub. That is glossing over some shit if I've ever heard it in my life. Let's talk about the violence in this, because Terrifier 2, or Terrifier as a franchise rather, has long been known for the violence. You have the hacksaw scene, and I'll just leave it at that in Terrifier for anybody who hasn't seen it. You have the bedroom scene in Terrifier 2, and again, just leave it at that. How did you feel about how this one developed the violence and amped up the gore? Do you think it was successful?
I had a feeling you were going to ask that question or something similar, and I don't have a great answer for you. I will say that Terrifier 2, what we'll just call the bedroom scene, was very uncomfortable. Again, in a way that I enjoy, because I like when horror makes me feel uncomfortable, even if it's something that I'm not necessarily enjoying. And I don't feel like there was ever an individual kill sequence where I felt that same level of, like, I don't know if repulsion is the right word, but like Terrifier 2, I will tell people, like, there is a scene in there that is very uncomfortable and it goes on way too long, and that is both the pro and the con for that scene. And that's the one that, like, I will give them a heads up of like, hey, I know you're just getting into horror. I don't know if Terrifier 2 is something that you would like, Kristen. But you can definitely try. Just know there's a scene that you might want to tap out on. Terrifier 3, I don't feel like there's anything, despite it being overall a much, much killier movie. I don't think there's any one thing in particular I was like, oh, that was worse than the scene in Terrifier 2. It seems like there was a way more creative kills, way more quantity of kills, yet nothing was that level of cruelty, I think. Did anything kind of reach that level for you?
Gee, Michelle, thanks for asking.
I wonder what. Yep. I wonder what it could possibly be.
It didn't. This didn't strike me as bothersome as, say, something like, a Serbian film. That's another level of stuff entirely that we don't need to talk about. But I did say to myself going into this, what can they possibly do from here? After they started with the hacksaw scene, and then they bumped it up to that bedroom scene. Like, where can they possibly go? What can they possibly do? And I said to myself, well, if you can't make the killing more vicious, then what you can do is you can make the victims more vicious, right? And I appreciate that it's not something they actually showed on screen. I do think that's an interesting and respectable level of restraint, all things considered, from Damien Leone. But I think that's what made me sort of able to, like, I don't like it, it's like, oh, look, he chopped up a 10-year-old child or whatever with an axe, and there's the kid's corpse just all mangled and bloody all over his bedroom. But again, what makes me not as bothered by it is number one, as you and I have talked about just even before we recorded, you don't actually see it happen, and I appreciate that. And also, this is a movie where the tone shifts back, and like, this is a movie, and this is what I talk about when I say it doesn't feel mean to me. I know what you mean and I think that's maybe not the way I want to explain it, but I see a movie like, say, like a Devil's Rejects, or a Megan is Missing, for example, which I finally saw after you talked about it on Michelle in Review, and oh man, I got
told you not to watch it.
I got thoughts about that film. But like, there's something about this one, just the attitude of art, the over the top. I think what it is I think the over the top absurdity of the Art the Clown character itself, the way he behaves even when he's not killing people. Like the sequence in here where he meets Santa, there's nothing fake about that for him. That is Art the Clown genuinely just fucking losing his mind that he's meeting what he believes is Santa Claus. And sure, he fucking butchers the guy eventually, because that's what Art does. But,
yeah.
But there's I can't put my finger on it specifically, but there's just a different feeling. This movie strikes me as more, we're doing this because we know it's absurd, not we're doing this to be like, oh, we're the sickest, like, we're like, it's not, we go the places nobody else dares to go, all this fucking, you know the kind of films I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, all my favorite ones.
Yeah, fuck you. But so there's enough going on here that, and again, I do appreciate that they didn't show it on screen. And then, of course, he bombs the shit out of a fucking Santa Claus scene in the middle of a shopping mall. Who knows how many children died there? But I did appreciate, though, that like that bit with the chainsaw that you were talking about, where the dude gets it right between the legs. Also, what you didn't mention is that is, in a lot of ways, a callback to the hacksaw scene, right? Yeah. And so it's becoming self-referential, and I think what you see a lot of in this, even though we do have the children victims, I think what you're seeing here is also Damien Leone realizing, I don't have to top myself anymore. People are on board now. And as long as we just keep the level where they want it to be, then, yeah, I mean, we want to try and do something new, something inventive every time. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like, what can we do that's even more savage or fucked up? It feels like he's got his place now. I don't know. Do you feel that way or?
Yeah. One thing that I also thought of is that this is one of those movies that is edgy, we could say, just for lack of a better word. But it's one of the few edgy films that didn't feel compelled to kill an animal on screen. If anything, it's nice to the rats. They got a dinner and they got to go on about. Which animal dies on screen?
It was a rat that they tested the liquid nitrogen projector on. They froze it solid and smashed it to bits.
Yes, but okay, yes.
I was actually about to start talking about that and how, frankly, the one unforgivable thing they did in this movie
is that they killed a rat.
Was that they fucking murdered those adorable little rats.
Yeah, but I was like, think of the rats at the end. You got like a meal and a nice little bath. I completely forgot about the liquid nitrogen one, but I'm also like, I didn't feel an emotional connection to that one because I was like, that was quick. That was not the torture that art would reserve for humans.
I did find a little of forgiveness, however, in the kill at the end where those rats, don't start them on fire, you jerk. But I have played with rats and been nibbled playfully by rats and been accidentally scratched by rats enough times to tell you that would be a fucking excruciating, awful nightmare. And that to me is where their creativity needs to go now, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be bloodier. It doesn't have to be splatterier. It just needs to be more clever. And I really loved that. I loved the liquid nitrogen fire extinguisher. I thought that was fucking great.
Yeah, the rats, that death, fairly simple, but my favorite one from the whole movie. Because it is just like oh shit, well, this is kind of based in reality. Obviously, it's more extreme because it's Art the Clown. You gotta. But it's like just something I haven't seen in a movie before. And I will always like something I have not seen in a movie before. There's so much stuff I have seen. And if you can show me something unique, like a severed head getting birthed by a woman who's in an insane asylum and who is now possessed by a demonic entity, I'm down. Sure, let's go on that. Or if you show me Chris Jericho as an orderly in that hospital, yeah, sure, let's do it.
He was in Terrifier 2 also.
Who was he in Terrifier 2?
It's in the very end. There's like a mid-credits sequence where
that one
they go
where
back
they show
and
Victoria.
Where they show you Victoria for the first time and what happens there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I completely forgot he played that too.
Yeah, Chris
Jericho's just going to become part of the massive canon, and he's going to become like a huge part of Terrifier 4, I bet. He's going to be the new Victoria, aka Pale White Lady, aka Daddy of Sienna, aka whatever demonic entity. This is such a wacky series. The more I talk about it, the more I know that I'm going to really like Terrifier 3 on later rewatches, but it was just, it was a lot. If you didn't remember the plot of Terrifier 2, it was a lot.
Yeah. I do want to mention one thing, because you were talking about how a big issue for you with Terrifier 2, and I think I've said something similar, is how there were these big swaths of time where it's just about like Sienna and her story and that sort of thing. And so like Leone, he got all that criticism for the first film that it was just super, super lean on plot, just a collection of special effects sequences. And so he went into that second one, and something that I actually said multiple times about that second one is like, yeah, there's more character development and story here, but it doesn't feel cohesive, right? It's like he wrote two different movies and then just alternated scenes between the two of them. It didn't feel cohesive, and I do want to say that I feel like he did much better here. And I think that reflects what you were saying, that this feels like they at least played the balance between the two better. It felt like this was a little... It just was a more mature bit of screenwriting, I thought. And so I wanted to point that out as something that I agreed with you about in this film. Yay!
We agreed on something. Well,
so first of all, the other things I wanted to talk about from the film. So Jonathan, of course, is not dead, Michelle.
I don't know. I did see his head in a cage.
Oh, did you? The one that they just told you was somebody else's head and then said, oh, nah, just is a joke.
Well,
it's this guy's head.
Here's the thing. Art the Clown is many things, but he is not a fucking liar. He would never. Actually, Victoria said those things, though, and she's a lying bitch.
Yeah, but also, look, here's the thing.
I know. He's definitely not dead.
Yeah,
he's going to become the next Victoria alongside Chris Jericho. They're going to get, it's going to be like a thing of our logo from our show where they get like spliced down the middle and sewn together.
Ooh, could be. I will tell you this, though, Michelle. This is my lasting question from this one. This is the thing that I am the most curious about now going into Terrifier 4. And that is the little girl from the opening scene. For the same reason, like, that girl is not dead.
No.
And anytime, I guarantee you, in any time, and now with the little girl's brother, we didn't see the actual butchering on screen. We saw the aftermath of it. We heard it while it was happening. They made it very clear it was happening. They just weren't going to show it to us. Again, respect. But the little girl... They don't imply anything. All we do is we see Art find her, and then we never see her again. There's that one moment where the uncle has gone to pick up Jonathan, and he's on the phone, and there's the weird staticky distortion, like the phone is possessed. And then we never see Jonathan again. All we get is them telling us he's dead. So I am 100% convinced that that girl from the beginning scene is not dead, and I want to know what the fuck is going on there, weirdly. Of all the other things happening in this story overall, that's the one I'm the most curious about.
I 100% agree with you that girl is not dead. When I went to look up, like, what the fuck did I just watch? A lot of things were like, and he killed a family of 4. No, he did not. That girl is alive, and he actually seems like kind of friendlier Art the Clown towards her. Like, I didn't get menacing like I do in other things he does. But I stand by that the actor who played Jonathan was too expensive, and they had to kill him off. They just didn't have the money. The Jonathan budget was used up. He had a very expensive writer. He only wanted blue M&Ms in the dressing room.
Could be.
All rooms he walked into had to be set at a 68.7 degree Fahrenheit level. It was very hard to maintain that with the studio lights. I think he was huge diva. They just could not keep up. That boy, he had to have a head in a cage.
Could well be.
Despite all his rage, he's still just a head in a cage.
Oh, shit. I see what you did there.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of.
Yeah, they're, shit, I just completely forgot what I was going to talk about. Oh, well, it's fine.
Jonathan being too expensive.
Oh, budgets. Yeah. Interestingly, the first Terrifier film, budget was somewhere, I guess, in the neighborhood of $25,000 to $30,000. The second one, budget was about $250,000. And then on the third one, budget was about $2.5 million. And this, I don't mean this as a criticism in any way, but does Terrifier 3 strike you as so much better and more slick a production that it's $2.5 million over Terrifier 1's $25,000.
Because of the use of practical effects, I'm saying yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot more involved in budgets as well. I'm sure they've got, I imagine Terrifier probably wasn't a union picture. That'd be my guess. They made that one without any guilds having representation. So there's that. I imagine also just the simple cost of producing. Well, no, everything's digital these days. I was gonna say producing prints or whatnot. But no, I found that interesting that they also, it increased by a factor of 10 both times. They went from 25 to 250 to 2.5. Maybe the next maybe Terrifier 4 will get 25 million, and then who knows what the fuck we're gonna get.
2.5 billion for Terrifier
Oh God,
4.
No.
I want to see what they'll do with that 10-hour saga. Where the doors are locked, you cannot leave. There is no break.
That would, man, and then Art the Clown comes out in every theater and murders everyone.
Yeah, I am waiting for them to build up to just real meta shit like that. It'll happen. Oh. I hope anyway.
Yeah. So that's Terrifier 3, guys. Again, if it's playing in a theater in your area, buy a ticket. Man, buy a ticket and give it to somebody else. Buy a ticket and just don't go. Whatever. Support theatrical, real indie cinema, especially real indie horror cinema. Michelle, you got anything else to add here this evening?
Oh, no, that was just, that was a lot.
Yeah,
in like a good way, but also a bad way. Yeah. I'm just mentally exhausted.
In a Terrifier way.
Ooh, that's a good note to end on.
All right. Well, the dog's got to pee, so we should wrap this up. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.
For more horror content, visit WeWatchShutter.com, where you'll find our world-famous, patent-pending Ghoul blog and Squelch files, as well as a schedule of upcoming episodes. Find us on social media at WeWatchShutter on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I guess Twitter, if you're still doing that for whatever reason. You can email us. mail@WeWatchShutter.com is the address. mail@WeWatchShutter.com. You can even call and leave us a voicemail, 701-566-9510. No, really. 701-566-9510. Give it a shot. See what happens. We Watch Shutter is a production of Rat Factory Media.